This should not be long. This should not be long. Okay. So when I first started preaching, I would type out every word I would say. Type it, practice it word for word, and that's how I did it. But when I started out preaching, I had a goal. I didn't want to be boring. That truly, seriously was my biggest goal. Like, I don't want people to be sitting there like, oh, we're in church, and falling asleep, and they're bored, and church is pointless. That's in their head. Like, this is why I don't go to church, because I don't get anything out of it. I wanted to keep people interested. So one of the things that I discovered early on was stories. If I can use a story, I don't have to type out every word of a story. I could just put a little note, tell the story about when the guy wanted me to take him from the canoe trip, from the rope swing. Tell that story. And that's all I had to write. I didn't have to type out every part of the story. I knew that story. And using personal stories really helps with that, because obviously I was there. I remember it. I don't have to write it down. And so at least every once in a while, I could look up and make eye contact with the story. So, I would still follow along. I'm telling you my process of, I would still kind of read, but then I get to the story, and that was the one part I could look and give everybody good eye contact, right? Actually, I take that back. I did write out stories. I did write out the stories until I had this guy who had been in ministry longer than me. His name was Craig. And we had this experience where we were walking through Walmart, of all things. He was going shopping for his son, moving him into his son's dorm room. And we're walking and talking, and I'm telling him about how I wanted to be a better preacher. And he talked to me about stories, and he said, let me tell you a story. He said, so there was a lady who knew that she was about to die. Her time of life, she had lived a long life, knew that she was about to pass. And so she called the preacher over and said, hey, I want to make arrangements because I know that my time is short. And he was like, oh, no, you got plenty of time left. And she was like, no, I want to make arrangements now. Come over. So he comes over and she says, when I'm buried and they put me in the casket, I want you to put a fork in my hand. He was like, okay, why do you want me to put a fork in your hand? And he said, every time that people walk by, or you tell the story when they walk by the casket, that when I was a child and we would have family gatherings and have family meals, they would say, hang on to your fork because the best is yet to come, meaning dessert. And so he said, when they go by the casket, she said, when they go by the casket, I want you to tell them the reason she's holding a fork is because the best is yet to come. So then my friend Craig said, now you tell me that story. I just told you that story. You tell it to me back. And I'm actually going to pick on somebody that I know I can pick on. Dad, can you tell me that story back?
A lady was about to die. She lived a long, good life. She's going to heaven. And she talked to the director about arrangements for her funeral. And she said, when I die, I want you to put a fork in my hand. And he said, why do you want me to put a fork in my hand? She said, well, as people go around, I want you to tell everybody the same story that I said, that even though I was dead, the best was yet to come.
All right. There you go. Anybody else want to take a stab at it? Come on, it'll be fun.
No.
There was a lady that was on her deathbed, and she asked for, she knew her time was coming to an end, and when she asked for her minister to come, and she said, listen, I know my time's coming to an end, but when I get in a casket, when they put me in a casket, I want you to put a fork in my hand, and when people pass by a casket, they'll say, well, what's the fork? And they'll say that when she was a little girl, sitting at the table, they said, no, hold on to your fork, because, even though we're passing around food, the best is yet to come. So right now in life, with me passing on in this life and holding a fork, just remember, the best is yet to come.
Boom. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. So my friend Craig said, look, you just told that story and you told it fine and you didn't need any notes. He's like, you can do this. You can do this. Like, have confidence in yourself. And he said, the thing about stories is it's your story. They don't know if you left out a part. I was like, oh yeah, good point. Like, they don't know if you missed a part of the story. So that really gave me confidence to use stories. So one of my favorite communion formats is to simply tell a story, make a Bible verse connection, and then make the application. So when I was, I've had several meals with my family. One meal I had, it was my graduation dinner after I graduated high school. And when I came in, I was the last one to come in to be there at the restaurant. And there were 2 seats open. And I just picked the first seat and sat down. So my sister-in-law had gotten up and gone to the bathroom. That's why there were 2 seats open. And when she came back, she says, Jeremy, your seat is the one with the balloon on it. Duh, graduate. And Rockford High School was proud to have me as a graduate that day. Right? So I messed that meal up. Another meal, I was supposed to take Andrea on the night I proposed to her. I was supposed to take her to a Japanese restaurant. I was going to take her where they cook the food right in front of you. And I walked in to what I thought was the entrance. It was inside a hotel. And I thought it was the restaurant. And I get in and there's no grills where you sit at. I'm like, well, that's weird. And so I'm like, we sat down. And it turns out we look at the menu. It says Riverfront Steakhouse. And I was like, this is not the right place. Honey, this is not the place I meant to take you to. What do you want to do? She's like, well, this looks like a nice place. Let's eat here. And it was some of the best steak I ever had in my life to this day. It was amazing. It was like $60 steaks. It was amazing. But do you know, my wife still married me, even though I took her to the wrong restaurant. So my point is, I messed up the graduation dinner. I messed up the restaurant proposing to my wife, and yet they still eat with me to this day. They didn't stop eating with me because I messed that up, right? So then I would read a couple of verses about grace, because that's what God's grace is all about, right? Is He takes us, even though we messed up. He takes us, might read Ephesians 2, 8, and 9. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this not of yourselves, it is a gift of God, not by works, so that no man can boast, right? And I would say, just as my family still eats with me, even though I messed up, God still welcomes us to His table for communion. See that? There's the connection. I made the connection between a story that happened to me, Bible verse, and then make the connection to communion, right? One more quick example of this format. So Josiah was standing in the living room the other day. He didn't have a shirt on. And he looks down at himself and he goes, I need to get in shape. And then he starts jogging really fast like this. And he looks down and he goes, didn't work. Okay. So what's the Bible verse? Okay, he was expecting instant results, right? So, okay, I need to think of a Bible verse that says, maybe it talks about the process of how God changes our hearts over time. We don't just change overnight, but maybe God is patient with us. Something about God's patience. Something about, there's a word, it's called sanctification is the word for where the Holy Spirit keeps working on our hearts. I could find a Bible verse on sanctification. What were you thinking?
That after 40 days and 40 nights of Jesus not eating, he was hungry.
There you go. So the format is tell the story, read the Bible verse, and be like, hey, just as Josiah didn't change instantly, God knows we're not going to change instantly, but He's patient with us. And, so during communion time, we just remember a God who's patient with us and loves us and sent His Son to die for us. You see how that goes? It's just a simple format. Story, Bible verse, and then make the connection, right, to the point that you're trying to make. I really like that because I can do that without looking at any notes. I can remember that Now, my dad says he would still need to make the notes of the order of it, and that's fine. But you could do most of that without looking at very many notes, right? I love this format of getting away from reading to people, because ultimately people don't want to be read to. I mean, if you can practice something over and over again and make good eye contact, then that's fine. And if that's worked for you over the years, that's great. If you're able to make good eye contact. But I really like the stories that you can just look up and make eye contact and you don't need notes. So that's really all I want to talk about. And then, did you want to?
Couple things, few things, real quick. Scripture is required. Application to communion is required. When you arrive here, it should be at least, I think everybody here arrives early. But get ready, find a place where you can just think, say a prayer, and get ready mentally. And find out, ask Russ or Brian or Jeremy how many songs they're going to do. And it's easier now because lately Jeremy's been doing prayer right after the 2 songs or 3 songs. So after he prays. But what I like to do is, first of all, I like to sit near the front before church starts. And then it's just real quick to get up there because we don't want dead spots.
Keep it flowing.
Yeah, try to use the mic even if it falls down on the ground. Always take communion because it's an example of the flock. And lastly, present your communion meditation in a manner that proves your love for the Lord because of everything He has done for you. That's it.
Wow. When you said your part was short, I know it was that short. All right, cool.
I think my prayer was short.
Yeah. So hopefully this helps. Like I said, I'm not trying to tell anybody to totally change the way they do communion, but I just know my struggle when I was first starting out and how much stories really helped me. So, all right. Well, thank you for your time, and we need to talk about baptism. Have you heard?
Mm-hmm.
No, I haven't heard.
Someone's interested.
Oh, yeah.